Morning. So today we're going to finish with the four P's. So far, we have already looked at various of the P's. We've looked at product, and we looked at the product life cycle, and we looked at the different factors that intervene in the BCG matrix when analyzing the product mix of a company. We also looked last class of pricing strategies and the different approaches that companies can take to setting the price of their products. Today, we're going to look at promotion and place. So those two are likely among the most important. Besides the price, one of the most important considerations for a client is actually being aware that something is available. So promotion and place play a huge role in that one. So today, we're going to look at the kinds of strategies that companies can set in order to create an effective marketing mix based on product and on promotion and on place. So let's look at each strategy separately. Online retail has made this a lot more possible than it used to be. So for example, consumers can order directly from a producer on their website, for example, when it's something that is a very particular product. Normally, when you buy something, you're not buying something from the maker of that product. You're buying it from somebody that distributes that. So more normally, the kind of distribution that you're looking at is what we call indirect distribution. So if you're a company that is making stuff, normally you don't sell that stuff to the public yourself, or at least, there comes a point at which you're so big or you are so specialized in producing it that it doesn't make sense for you to also take care of selling it. And because selling it also carries costs. Now think about, for example, when you are making something and you have a lot of it, say furniture, for example, it takes money to store that furniture somewhere. You need to have some kind of storage facility, una bodega. And that means that you have to pay the rent for that place in addition to paying for the rent, for example, of your store. Unless you're a relatively local or a relatively small shop, you probably need to pay for both. And you also need to pay for the transportation from the storage facility to the customer. So normally what ends up happening is that somebody, some kind of business takes up that cost. Either a retailer, a store that sells your product, and they pay for the storage, they pay for the cost of distributing, they pay for the advertising, they pay the high rent of a sales location, because normally places where there's a lot of foot traffic have very high rents. And if a producer doesn't want to pay for all of that, what they will do is they will take their product to somebody that can do all of those things, and then they will sell their products to that retailer. That would be the first kind of indirect product. So let's look at what would be an example of each. So think, for example, about if you're thinking about a bakery, somebody that makes bread. Now, a very clear example of that would be a local bakery like the Cabo Bakery, because they make their own products there and then they sell them directly to the consumer. So their distribution channel is that. That bakery pays for the rent. They don't have a lot of inventory. They don't have to store, a whole lot of bread, for months before it is sold out. They basically, what they bake for the day is what will be sold in the next couple of days, and they don't keep a lot of inventory around. So it makes sense for them to be owners of the shop, owners of the place where people go shop, where people go buy their product, and then they pay for both costs of storage, of storefront, of the production facility. But if you were, let's say, a producer that makes bread for restaurants and hotels, it would make sense to be a different kind of distribution channel. Now, the second example would be, for example, if you are a bakery that makes a lot of bread. You don't only sell to the consumer, but you have an industrial facility where you bake a lot of bread, and instead of selling it directly to consumers, what you do is you sell it to different restaurants. And so instead of selling to just one, directly to each consumer, you sell to the restaurants where they shop, and that restaurant counts as a retailer. So that would be an indirect form of distribution where you are distributing to retailers. Each of the restaurant is a retailer, and then that reaches consumers that way. So the consumers go to the restaurant, and the restaurant takes care of ordering that bread from you every couple of days or every week or so, and all you have to do is worry about selling to them. So you really only have a few clients, and those clients are the restaurant, and all you care is dealing directly with them. Now, if you are a bigger producer, then that means you probably have an even different distribution channel. Now, imagine you are Bimbo, for example. You're the country's and probably the world's largest company that makes bread, and you don't sell directly to restaurants, or you might, but you don't do it directly from the factory to the restaurant. You do it through something that is called a distributor, and that distributor, you may be the owner of that, or you may be associated with that. So picture, for example, Bimbo sells to a wholesale, there are companies that are called wholesalers, and what they do is they sell to the smaller stores. So, for example, picture a Costco but for businesses. This giant thing that buys a lot of Bimbo bread and then sells it to the smaller stores. And those big stores or big companies that sell to the small stores are called wholesalers or distributors. And the reason why these companies exist is because they perhaps have a wider reach. So, for example, you need to send to different cities across the country, and you don't want to do it yourself. So the wholesaler will have a network of trucks. Now, the last kind of distribution channel wouldn't really be for bread, because bread is a finished product, and normally people have enough of a supply, and it doesn't really make sense for us to have what we call an agent or a broker. But the last level is that one. An agent or a broker is somebody or a company that basically is somebody that secures distribution or supply for wholesalers and retailers. It's a further intermediary, and normally that person wouldn't exist in most industries, except when, for example, supply chains can be compromised or put in danger of some sort, or you really need to make sure that you have that item available for sale. Because what agents and brokers do is they secure specific prices, or they secure specific levels of supply, or they have some kind of they mediate between different producers, and they have a lot of contacts among producers to ensure that their client will have enough of a specific kind of product. So that's why I added here the example of flour. So flour would be something that all bread makers need to have, and so people that make wheat flour, the agent or broker will have a lot of different producer contacts, and the agent or broker will secure that those wholesalers or distributors have that wheat bread. That wheat flour at a certain level, at a certain price, at a certain time. And the agent or broker can play around with the price. Oftentimes, they deal in more sophisticated financial mechanisms, which are called futures contracts. But that agent or broker is also part of the supply chain. And so some companies make use of agents or brokers in order to reach wholesalers or distributors, and from their retailers and from their consumers. So how should companies think about how to distribute? There are a number of considerations, and the first one would be obviously the cost for the company. Probably the most expensive is direct, because you have costs associated with storing and with transporting goods and with rent for a storefront. And the least expensive would be for you the most indirect ones. However, this also has an impact on consumer price, because the more intermediaries, likely they each take a margin of profit, which means that each intermediary layer increases the price for the consumer. Also, the reach and convenience is another factor. If you sell, for example, to a supermarket store, it will be a lot more convenient for people to find your product. It will reach a lot more people, but it will also increase the price, and it will also take away from your profit, because you have to sell it at a lower unit price to the retailer in order for them to buy from you. Because they have economies of scale, and you are competing with other companies to place your products in their shelves. Finally, you might want to retain control of the distribution. So, for example, if you want to control the kind of service that the consumers get, doing it through indirect intermediaries might not be the best. So companies have to think about all of these factors. If I don't sell to them directly, then that creates a few problems for me. But if I do that, I increase my costs.